you, all of you, for these very rich and interesting interventions. I think we now have lots of food for discussion. I would suggest that we start with only clarification questions or questions regarding the interventions that have been just made before we get into the debate with further comments and other reactions. So please, I would start just with particular questions of clarification on these first interventions, if there are any. I see there is one on the bottom there. I don't know, do we have an extra microphone? No? Okay, so you will have to...
Can I just clarify with Mr. Sutherland? I think we're on the same page. My husband and I have long thought that this Dean Brent...
Sorry, if you can please stand up and introduce yourself.
My name is Catherine Gordon. If I can just clarify with Mr. Sutherland about this, that we're on the same page concerning the so-called Dean Brent. It seems to me that my husband and I have both thought from the very beginning that this was just nonsense. And the real reason for it is because Mr. Lesueur, or we are told that the EU put pressure on him or whatever, would not accept, came up with the idea that non-Jersey companies could trade here and pay no tax, putting Jersey companies at an unfair disadvantage, and in fact encouraging Jersey companies, those bigger boys who can do it, to actually sell their companies to someone who lives out the island. Yes. Surely, if you trade in Jersey, you must pay tax. And then all this nonsense about deemed rent and everything would just fall away. Yeah. I would just like to make one other quick point.
Very quick.
Yeah, it will be very quick. There was another thing that was supposedly supposed to be helpful to small companies, that they wouldn't pay tax on their profits, but when they sold their company at the end, then they would pay tax, and they were supposed to have kept their profits. Well, most small businesses, of which they are probably, especially if finance goes, going to be the biggest employers, they don't have the spare capital to put money aside. And maybe just a small family business, they're relying on when they retire, selling their business, and then not having to, and living on the proceeds, and then not then being given a big tax whammy. I would just like to put that to thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I think the move to go to 010 was a mistake. It was led by the Isle of Man. The Isle of Man has completely different fiscal and financial structure, and its economy is differently based. In chasing the downward spiral to compete with the Isle of Man, that was a mistake, because they are bound to beat us on that downward spiral. And messing around at the edges, saying, oops, we appear to have lost £7 million worth of tax from these people, and trying to recoup it in some way, quite frankly, it just makes us look ludicrous.
Jeff, just on that one point, I know you've been celebrating this, but the Treasury, I think, is accepting that Dean Rent is looking like it's not going to go ahead. You are aware of that, aren't you?
I was aware that some politicians were saying that they weren't very supportive, no longer supportive of this Dean Rent bumpy proposal. They haven't admitted that actually it's not. It would never have floated. It would never have floated.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for clarification before we go into the debate? I didn't see any before. No, now, so I think we can open the debate now and start with more broader comments or reactions on these interventions we just had. So I would ask people to be brief so that we can have a maximum of inclusive and interactive debate on this, and to introduce yourself and stand up and speak up, or if you don't feel like speaking up too much, then approaching here and using this microphone. Et je rappelle que pour les francophones, il y a moyen de participer et d'intervenir en français. Il y aura une petite traduction simultanée à faire en français.
else wants to. My name is James Wimberley. I'm the elder brother of Daniel Wimberley, local figure, though I live in Spain. My marginal tax rate is 43%. I wonder if the connection between the global financial crisis and the structural issue of tax havens and tax avoidance is really anything more than an accident. That I can see that the offshore financial centres probably played some marginal role in the global financial debate, but the main actors were the great banks of the international money centres, Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, Citigroup, Royal Bank of Scotland. These are very large, and these are enormous banks, and they were operating in the major financial systems, capitals of the world, and they made mistakes on a scale which is impossible for places like Jersey. Now, I do agree that this has created a political situation, a climate for much greater regulation of these people, which will catch up the tax havens in the wash. But I'm not sure it's anything more than that. But the tax haven issue, it seems to me, a long-term structural one. This is something that places like Jersey have been doing for 40, 50 years, and the moral issue, as I see it, is the third world looting, which was eloquently described to us by the chap from Christian Aid. And though the tax avoidance by the citizens of rich European countries is morally insignificant, but is politically more important. But I would like to finish with a question to the Christian Aid chap, whose name I'm terribly sorry I've forgotten. And that is, in his concern to strengthen the governance and the situation of decent third world governments, like, say, those of Ghana or South Africa or Mozambique, what about the undesirability of strengthening the hand of those countries which are unlucky enough to be run by kleptocratic thugs, like say, Angola or Russia? Thank you.
Thank you. I have another question here. Do you want to speak up? Or?
Do you want to do this?
Well, I was thinking maybe of taking a few questions or comments and then a round of responses, but if you want to react directly. Okay. I have one more here.
My name is Anthea Lawson. I work for an NGO based in London and Washington called Global Witness. We investigate corruption in natural resource extraction in some of the worst governed countries in the world, which is why I wanted to make my intervention now and explain why it is that I'm here representing Global Witness, supporting my colleagues who are organising this meeting. We've got a new report which came out yesterday called Undue Diligence, How Banks Do Business with Corrupt Regimes, which illustrates precisely the point that you raise. Part of the equation that needs tackling is to ensure that tax evasion can't happen that affects developing countries in terms of removing their tax base. But there's another part of the equation which is making sure that we don't have a financial system which enables the corruption to take place in the first place. Now, the amounts of money being looted with grand-scale state looting, it can't be kept under the mattress. As one Nigerian anti-corruption investigator put it to us, if you want to fly an aeroplane, you don't take off unless you know where you're going to land. It's the same with this kind of money. Now, what is enabling this money to be landed and then to be taken in the first place is lack of transparency in the financial system. Part of it is to do with banks' due diligence failures, and part of it is to do with the fact that we currently have a regulatory system which has all sorts of opaque corners, some of them in the more regularly recognised tax havens or secrecy jurisdictions, some of them in the major financial centres. And those are what need to be tackled in order to close these loopholes and prevent the